My name's Garry Roost, and got into actually through school plays. Really, you start out there, and the Leicestershire Youth Theatre was very influential on my decision and ambition to become an actor. And three people that really influenced me, which were Maurice Gilmore, OBE, Simon Taylor, and a guy called David C. Burrows. And they all recognised something in me. They all thought I should go to drama school. And we did, that was in 1976 and 1977, we did Bits of Ice Stream, and then we did Eatless the following year, selling casinos by Ted Hughes. So it was a phenomenal experience for me, and we were very lucky to have those three men there. In fact, Harold Wilson, he is MP for the arts, whose name escapes me in this league. She actually catapulted Maurice Gilmore's work to a national attention, and so his work had a massive broad spectrum in dance, experimental theatre, and they really nurtured young performers, me being one of them. There's a couple of us who became professionals. It's called Colin Kelly. We've both done pretty good careers. So my character is Young Workman, and I was called up through Career Rodriguez, the casting director, to meet Jerry Mills. Now, I'd seen Jerry's name pop up on TV screens, through the 70s, growing up. And, he was involved in a lot of things like Set Cars, Dempsey and Makepeace, and Huntsburg, and a lot of other things. So his name was quite iconic before I even met him, to me. And I thought, wow, I didn't know Jerry Mills, being Jerry Mills, because I was into TV history, even as a young actor. So I met Jerry, it was a summer's day, and he got the script. He was a very, very thoughtful man, quite a thinker, and I liked that. Because David Burrows, I mentioned earlier, he was a real thinker, a real intellectual. I was fascinated by deep thinking, talented directors and artists. So he said, look, I've got this script. It's three characters, but we're going to roll it into one for you. How do you feel about that? Great. By this time, I've done quite a bit of TV. I've done a couple of things for Monday Weekends television through Telly now, which I'll tell you about later on. So that was great, but in my head, I'm thinking, that's three characters, three thought patterns. And I didn't say this to Jerry, because you just, you're expected to bring energy onto the set. Bring the energy, say the lines, get the job done. So we read it, and he said, well, how do you feel about that? Great. And he talked about the series with a lot of depth. And I thought, yeah, this is the real deal. This guy's the real deal. Because that's what I love about directors. I like working with directors who they have a way of working. Some of them like to talk about the character, how they see it. Some of them want you to hit the mark and say the lines. So both of them are valid, because the ones who want you to hit the mark and say the lines, they trust you. You've been cast. They want you to do that job. So the biggest mistake you can make with one of those is just, it's the character now. You just hit the mark. And with Jerry, you could do both of those things. So and that's how I was going. But I'm pretty sure that Tony Arnell might have had a say in it, because he was head of casting and he gave me my first job. He saw me in a show at Theatre Royal called Short of Music, written by Daniel Morley, who went on to do things at the National, very talented Irish writer. And he saw me in that show and he called me in. And So I had a solo meeting with the great Tony Arnell, who was head of casting. Again, he was independent, a great man, and a very, very lovely man as well. These people were very kind. And that's always a great thing for an actor to realise that you're talking to great human beings as well. So, I'm pretty sure that there was a link there. I'd also done Deputy Makepeace about a year before, so my work had been seen, and I think, and this was in the first series, if I'm right, episode 3 of the first series, so I was quite privileged to be in the early episodes. That's my memory. I'm sure I'm exactly right. But I was very excited to be part of it. Because what it was, there'd been an explosion. I can't quite remember. I don't know if it was a gas explosion or people were under the rubble and they died and were missing. So I think I had a scene with a lady who was in a flat, and I think it was to reassure her. And there was another scene with a police officer who we were talking about what had happened, and then there was the male final scene with Sean Blower came on, and there was devastation all around us. So there was a lot of potential tragedy evolved around it. That's what I remember. I do vaguely remember they turned out and they were fine and they were all okay. Yeah. So I haven't seen the episode in a long time. I've seen a little bit of it. I saw the bit where my character said there were people buried under here. That's all I've seen. I haven't seen the whole episode. But that really starts to ring a bell. I was just there for, I think it was a day or 2 days maximum, for those scenes, and it was. I was very happy to be in it because I knew Sean from going to theatre shows. We bumped into each other. We knew each other vaguely, or we may have done a reading somewhere over the years, or we'd been at the same auditions, So he was a really lovely guy, very likable man, and very nice. I was pleased with him, but I was also excited to be in it, because it was a popular TV, it was a popular show to be in, and although being the first series was probably before we knew it was going to be successful as a series. So it's interesting how when you look back on what you've done, that's great. Then that's just occurred to me now as I'm talking. Wait a second, that was the first series. Were the episodes going out as we shot? I don't think they were, in my memory. But nonetheless, I was really pleased to be here. Because these were pioneering times of TV. These were new series. You had the 60s, which was the big explosion of TV, and the 70s. So it was let's remember, real TV programs have only been going 20 years, really. Yes, there's stuff from the 40s, and there's all sorts of stuff going on, but soaps, TV programs, The Avengers, things like that, they were really groundbreaking TV. I mean, Avengers is even a cult following even now. The location, I can't remember which part of London it was. Back then there was a lot of demolitions going on, especially around East London. And I know when I did Deputy Makepeace, it was in Docklands, it was out there. And I think, still asbestos in those buildings. And we were shooting that, and I think it's in a similar place, but it was, I think it was flats that had been demolished, so it needed to fit that storyline of gas explosion. Again, I'm not sure if it was a gas explosion in the episode, but it was along those lines, some explosion that happened. So a lot of demo rubble in the background. It was perfect to see. And of course, health and safety was pretty good then, but not like it is now. So it was safety, but you had to look after yourself as well. So yeah, they were good with that sort of thing back in the day, but I think now, obviously, things have moved on. Again, it's such a long time ago. I just remember, it was a good atmosphere on the set. People were very friendly, welcoming. It was pretty relaxed on set, but professional, obviously. And the main cast were very welcoming, supportive. I felt like I fitted in. I felt welcome on set, comfortable, and going back to the interview with Jerry, because I've got it in my head, it's 3 characters, 3 fortnights, even though it'd been rolled into one. I was kind of like, I had a little bit of a block, thinking, this is an emergency. But I didn't feel under pressure. I didn't feel pressurized. So I did my best with that, and I didn't feel. Sometimes you can go onto a set feeling really nervous or really anxious, and it could be that it's now or never when you're filming something. You've got to get it right there. You can't spend all day doing 50 takes. So there's always that kind of pressure, but I don't remember feeling awkward or stressed. I felt like it was a very good working set, and I found anyone I worked with on that, because I did 3 different scenes. Everyone was really great to work with. I was thinking about that on the way over. I don't remember anything specific, but I could see from the photographs that you put up that I remember feeling really comfortable in the costume, and again, everyone that's connected with this show, they all had many years of experience in TV. Jerry went back to 69 or 67. It's that cast and things like that, and I think the costume team maybe they were all highly experienced and could really bang on with fashion, because you look at that, the hair. I had a 80s haircut, and sometimes I was told, we picked you because you got the look at the time. I did a commercial for Melody Maker years ago. I was a bit of a musician back in the day, so I loved Emily. And the client came over to me and said, we picked you out straight away because you got the right look. And I thought, nice feedback. So when I looked at costumes and Burning, it was, he's a workman. The hat thing was good. I felt, because sometimes you can do something, you turn up, and the trousers are too short, and they'll say, well, we'll come away and suit that. But I would wear a suit that fits. Do you know what I mean? Because that can happen sometimes. If you crack on because the top part is the only bit of the scene. So, just try and make as little fuss about that as possible. But I think, with this, it was really spot on. You only have to look at the costumes for the series generally. Everything was spot on, really. And I looked at my hat, the way I looked, and it just looked natural. It didn't look, like this is a costume. So I think it was spot on. Again, it reflected the atmosphere on the set, being relaxed and welcoming. I don't recall any difficulties. There can be sometimes, but with London's Burning, it just seemed like everything was spot on. Just that, as I mentioned, you've got history and going back to iconic programs of the 60s and 70s, and you see his name come up as a director or producer. And so going back to I grew up with Z Cars, so that was a big thing, real pioneering TV time. And he knew what he wanted, because I'll be honest with you, going back to the thing where it's from 3 characters rolled into 1, so they scrubbed out the 3 names and there's just 1 name, Young Workman. But in my head, I'm thinking 3 characters, and so there was a bit where I suppose to say there were people buried up there, but I couldn't get the energy for the scene. It was a very quiet set, and Jerry did come over and he said, "Look, come on, you sound like you're having a cup of tea. There are people dead under the rubble. Come on, let's right." Okay, Jerry, and there was no argument, disagreement. It's just he knew what he wanted, and I've got a bit of a block, but I didn't say anything about it. Because it's like, I was saying to myself, "Look, come on, just say your lines." And so I cracked on. But, it was nothing personal. It was just some direction. And so he knew what he wanted. He was, come on, wake up. This is, get on with it. I think the other scenes were okay. I just had a block of this scene. Jack Rosenthal, I'm doing, and the names are iconic in TV, but my name, the one person that really did guide me through my early career was Tony Arnell. So I knew these people, and I knew that they were all in the writing and producing it, and at that age, Jack Rosenthal, again, you see his name come up time and again with various projects. But it was Tony Arnell that I remember more than anything. He called me in and he said, after Theatre Royal, just before he gave me the Michael Voice job, he said, "You've got an agent?" I said, "Not at the moment." He said, "Well, you've got to have an agent." I've been up to see various agents, and there was one agent that wanted to take me on. But I turned it down. And he said, "Oh, why did you turn it down?" I said, "Well, I just didn't feel it was right for me." He said, "They're good, I said, "Well, they didn't feel right for me. There's a reason. I won't go into that." And a couple of days later, he rang up and said, "Well, look, I've got a part for you, Bottle Boys." And that was my first introduction to TV. He said, "Also, I think I might have found you an agent." And Bill Hall, I think he might be right for you. And he did become my agent. I had an incredible career for a young actor. So I tend to think of Tony Arnell as my main influence. He really did look out for me. I worked for his daughter Jane as well over the years. But Jack Rosenthal is, I know he had an influence on some actors' careers. My colleague David Keyes, I think, speaks very fondly of him. But for me, it was Tony Arnell that I was always really grateful for, because he, along with Philip Hedley at Theatre Royal, Charles Havignard at Sitchin's Theatre, and various other people, they really made a massive impact on my very early career. it was just it was a very professional experience. It was very, very relaxed and not lazy, but, just relaxed. Everyone knew what they wanted, and, Joe came over and said, come on, let's get some energy into that scene. That's pretty cool. But by then I was a very experienced actor on the set. I'd done a lot of TV up to that point. I got a very impressive CV for a young actor. I don't have any negative experiences on it. I might have with other things I've done. Yeah, well, over the years, as I say, my early career started off with theatre. Back in the day with Short Mutiny, a lot of agents came to see that show, and a lot of casting directors, so a lot of work came out of it, and as you know, got my agent through Tony on now. And I also did a show called Bouncers in the West End in 1986-87, and a lot of directors, producers, casting directors came to see that show, and so a lot of work came about. But times changed, in the early 90s with the recession. I was doing a lot of work, but anything that went into my bank account was going shoo, shoo. But luckily, I had the work. I survived 16% interest rates, which is, testimony to my career, where a lot of people, we all suffered to a degree. Then it got into the early 2000s, that again changed, contracts had changed, repeat fees, reduced, with changing contracts. And I was still getting the work through that time, but then, I did a law degree part-time back in the early 2000s, and I was still doing the odd episode here and there, and Bill, the EastEnders came up. And then I started to write my own shows. I had an idea for a show which went to Edinburgh. And then after that, I had a blueprint, really. I've got 2 solo shows now that I tour over the last 13 years. One's called Hope and the Secret Life of Francis Bacon, which is about the artist Francis Bacon. I play all the characters. He's a great character. And then that was in 2014. My first solo show was in 2012. And now, I also tour a show called Warhol Bullet Karma, which is about the factory and the attempted shooting by Valerie Solanas. I've toured both of those shows all over the world, Australia, Europe, and I took Warhol to New York City last autumn. Got fantastic feedback. And so I write those shows for myself. And I think as I was talking to you on camera, I chase down every word. So if I've got a character that's got one word, it's just got to be that right word. If I've got a character that's just got a line or two, it's got to really mean something for the story. And I'm playing all the characters, so I get a lot of time on stage, but they are separate characters. And as I was found as an actor, sometimes in TV and film, and lying just wouldn't be quite right, because they're mostly focused on the bigger picture. And I'm thinking, but they do get annoyed when actors change lines, and I'm not one of those actors. I just say the line. I don't change it. Unless they want that to happen. But for me, as a writer, I think it's so important to chase down just every syllable and make it sound as correct as possible. I've got other ideas, and I tend not to talk about that till I'm actually doing it. So if somebody's going to rip me off, they can wait, because I have had people rip off my ideas and very naughty. I took legal advice on it. But you know what? I thought, well, I've got better ideas. I'm just going to do something better. And and bold in I do. And taking solo shows to, their backyard, like New York City for Warhol and Soho for Francis Bacon. I've done the shows for people who knew Bacon. I know the women in his life. They are now in my life. And I get on with them, as he did. And that's incredible. When you do these shows, you do your research, you can't help but meet people that they knew. I've also done the show for Warholians, people who knew Warhol. And luckily they approved of the show, they get great feedback on it. And so when I go back to the Leicestershire Youth Theatre that I mentioned at the beginning, the experimental theatre, I've become the actor that I wanted to be now. And one of the guys that was working on Midsummer Night's Dream in 1976, he came to see the show. He used to play in the Electric Light Orchestra when they first started out singing, and he loved it. And it's great to have him in the audience so you can see where I've taken everything. And that's quite an exciting journey. But London's burning. I think of it often, so I struggled with that line. I couldn't get the emotion out, and I was young at overthinking. And that kind of helped me in my writing. So it's a real positive memory for me. London's burning, even though I just had a small part in it. We take our work seriously, when we get a job like that. As a young actor or an older actor, we are grateful for the work we get. So it's important to remember it, and it does marry up with what you do later in life. That's a pleasure. And back to doing this, I think it's really important for the TV history. It's a pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.